Welcome to the Draftstars AFL show with Smatho and Tom.
Well, welcome back to the next edition for the Draftstars AFL show, brought to you by the folks at Daily Fantasy Rankings, Australia's #1 resource for your AFL Daily Fantasy needs. And of course, by Draftstars, Australia's #1 platform for your AFL Daily Fantasy. I'm Smatho, and a special co-host this week, all the way from the farm, DFR's own Tom. Welcome to the show, mate. Thanks for stopping by to talk some AFL Daily Fantasy.
It's all right. Thanks for having me, Smatho. I managed to slap together a bit of a studio here. Lighting's not too good, but we should be good to go.
No, we don't worry about the studio works here, and even just like that intro, paying the big bucks for the intro. They just we all want to talk here is just about AFL Daily Fantasy. Now, for those who don't know you here, Tom, obviously my co-host Rudy, he's currently on grade 7 camp, looking after millions of children, making sure they survive. A little bit about yourself. How can they find you on Twitter? Also, your handle is on the screen there for Draftstars. Little general about yourselves before we kick off the show.
Well, yeah, I'm golf, footy, cricket on Twitter. Not too active on there, but I am on there. I don't know. Obviously, we do the NFL show together, so some people might know us from that, and writing plenty of articles for the NRL, for the golf, for the cricket. So just covering everything.
Yeah, now don't be shy. Obviously, your work on DFR has been exemplary over the last 12 to 18 months. Now, your Twitter usually blows up when you pick those winners for the golf, mate. They're not usually hard to do. Well, they are hard to do. Sorry about that. You've been on fire with the golf so far.
Yeah, we'll call it beginner's luck. We're about, 2 months into it, picked maybe 4 or 5 winners, and haven't actually placed an outright bet on a single one of them. So how well am I going?
How well are you going? How well are you going? Now, let's talk about AFL. How are you going the AFL? Because obviously your avatar is bright green, so you can't miss you on the Draftstars leaderboard when you're up there and about. So how has your AFL Daily Fantasy been going since you've been playing on the platform?
I was pretty new at it last year, so it was a big roller coaster, I'll call it. Had a few good results, and then week 1 this year wasn't great. I came in a bit underprepared, and managed to get second place last Thursday night. Top things up a bit, and then a couple of good results over the weekend. So we're off and running in 2022.
You are off and running. Now, unlike our previous host here, Rudy, who likes to throw in a couple in the micro and possibly splurge out in the mini, obviously you're not shy in terms of when it comes to injury. So if anyone has any questions during the stream, pop them in the chat here on Facebook or on YouTube. If you want to ask any these mass multi-injuring questions or how you go about your process, drop them in, and obviously Tom can get them throughout the stream. If not, chuck them on Twitter. Say good day to him. He's more than helpful giving you a hand anytime when it comes to daily fantasy here in Australia. But we are going to be talking about Thursday night AFL. The Bulldogs are on again this slate versus the Swans. A $100,000 prize pool here from Draftstars. 7:20 p.m. start. We're at Marvel Stadium. Just under $10,000 in the kitty for first place. Let's have a look at the teams that dropped here on Thursday evening here in Australia. So let me bring up the teams here for you, Tom, so you can have a look at these. Just the one change from either side. Bailey Smith is obviously a key in for the Bulldogs after missing last week's game. Hayden Crozier didn't look too well, obviously, after his little conditions from last week. And Bailey Williams was the medical sub. Surprise little addition here for the Swans with Joel Armadi coming in, with Logan McDonald being left behind back in Sydney. Mate, so obviously there's not many changes there, but what do you think in terms of what Bailey Smith will do for fantasy-wise here?
Yeah, well, it sort of just takes us back to what we saw in round 1, where yeah, obviously it's a defender going out for a kind of a hybrid midfielder coming in. That'll probably shake up the midfielders a bit. Guys like Rourke Smith, Lockie Hunter, Liberatore, they're all sort of at risk of spending a lot more time forward. I mean, Liberatore has already been spending a fair bit of time forward, so not sure exactly what's going on with him, but that does shake things up a bit. And then for the Swans, Amati for McDonald doesn't really change much. I think it's a good in. He's he looked like a good player in the little bit we saw of him last year. So structure-wise, should be very similar for the Swans.
Excellent. Now, obviously, Tom's work here on Daily Fantasy Rankings cannot be ignored, but you can also can't ignore the work of our free cheat sheets. I'm just a little sneaky plug here for DFR's cheat sheets here. They're already up on the site, ready to go for tomorrow night's clash. You'll be able to sort them by projection or by value there. It's free to use, dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. We'll be using these throughout the show this evening. There's a lot of Bulldogs towards the lower end of the scale there, so that might be coming into play. Now, I've got a question for you, Tom, straight away. Here we go. I've got Nicky Boy here, first of all. He says, welcome, lads. Maybe slip in a couple of NRL strategy tips. So less complicated to me. We might be able to drop some NRL chat at the end of the show, so stay tuned there, old Nicky Boy. Nicky Boy's been growing really well on Draftstars. I've just been noticing his work lately, so congratulations to him. Keep that up. And there's Andrew as well, asking, since we've got the projections here, do projections play any part in your process when entering teams there?
Yeah, absolutely. For myself, I spend way too much time making my own projections for most sports. But yeah, I think if you're entering a lot of teams, it's the best way to kind of get like a reasonable exposure to everyone. Otherwise, you tend to get locked on a couple of players and forget a couple of guys that are very relevant. So I think using projections like these ones, running them through the cruncher is a pretty good starting point.
What is your let's call it your standard deviation then? Do you tinker a lot? Do you go, okay, I might put McRae in for 125 and see what kind of lineups that comes out, or maybe I might put McRae at maybe a 90 or 95. Do you tend to do that?
Not so much. Personally, I like to use the 2.5% reduction crunch on the Fantasy Insiders cruncher. I find that kind of, gives me a good spread, doesn't give me too much of any one player. Gives me some pretty unique looking lineups, which still project reasonably well. So I don't like to mess with the actual numbers too much.
What I'm trying to do right now for you, Tom, is actually madly bring up the cruncher. When you say 2.5, you actually go into your settings here, don't you, mate? And you go to your exposure. In your portfolio method, as we're talking about. So obviously the default here on the Draftstars side have reduce players by 1%. You can also have it at unique players and max exposure, which means that they just takes those numbers and doesn't just spits out what it can. But you talk about reducing it here by 2.5%. So that's where you find the feature there on the Fantasy Cruncher. So hopefully, Andrew, that answers your question there. If you've got any other further stuff, drop it in. All right, let's actually talk about strategy for this particular game. When I bring up the Draftstars lobby for you, what is your actual overall strategy for this particular match when you start looking to build some teams?
Yeah, so looking at kind of the fantasy profile for both teams, it's somewhat similar. I think the Dogs maybe are starting to drop off a bit. They used to be quite a dominant fantasy team, and the Swans, they're pretty up there. So you can't really split them that way, which means I'm happy to stack both ways. I think the Dogs are favourites. I think I saw they were paying about $1.80 or something. So I'm guessing the Dogs will be a bit heavier in the stacks. And yeah, for that reason, I'm kind of leaning towards doing a few more Sydney stacks and getting a bit unique that way.
All right. Well, let's have a look at position by position, as we always do on the Draftstars AFL show. We start here with your rucks. You always got to start with your rucks. And when they we were building salaries for this particular slate, we just noticed how many Swans rucks are available. Obviously, Lachlan McAndrew is on the rookie list, but we've got blokes like Name Smith and Callum Slick. They're not getting games here. So we've got three options here, starting with Tom Hickey at 12,880. Hayden McLean's there at 9,290, who's obviously gives a bit of a chop out, relieving the main ruckman in Hickey. And then obviously Joel Amati, you've been touched on. He's there at $8,840. They're all going up against Tim English, who's available at 13,230. He's coming off back-to-back fantasy tons. Rudy loved him last week. No backup. Almost lock him. Wouldn't say lock him in, but obviously for a very good score. Where are you leaning, though? You said you want to do Sydney stacks. So do Sydney players start here in your rucks for those particular stacks?
Yeah, not so much. Obviously, everyone knows how good a spot English is in with the solo rock duties. And, I think he's like 24 years old, sort of starting to hit the point where ruckmen are developed enough to take the role themselves. Obviously that's easy for everyone to see how well he's going. Quite happy to start with him and still do a Sydney stack. But I think we'll probably talk about it more in the forwards, but I think McLean, Amati, and we'll probably talk about Buddy Franklin, have a good opportunity in this one against a pretty suspect key defensive group for the Dogs. We saw Charlie Curnow, Harry Mackay, Jack Silvani run amok last week, win the slate for those who played them on Thursday night. So, yeah, I think a similar opportunity, maybe not quite as good with the pricing and the scoring of those players, but definitely wouldn't write off playing them in the ruck.
Yeah. I'll have to say that Tim English will be at least, 50, 60% owned, even if you've got four options here, or you reckon there'll be a lot of double stacking going on?
Yeah, obviously, three of those can be played forward. So, I think we could get 60 plus of English and still get a decent amount of the others as well.
All right. Let's move on to the. No, go Hickey. Go you, Hickey. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say, like, Hickey can get the job done. He can outscore English with the pricing pretty close there. So, I think it's wise to, if you're putting in a few lineups, I'd put a few Hickey lineups in as well for sure.
All right. Sorry about that. Let's move on to Aussie defence. Obviously, Jake Lloyd is a fantasy pick at back. He's available at 14,700. Josh Kennedy is only a defender now. He's available at 12,650. And then obviously there's a popular player, Nick Blakely. He's there at 10,520. Back-to-back 81s there. So that particular salary, he's going to be proved to be pretty popular. Also up the top here is Caleb Daniel here at 12,770. Only had a 71 last week at that particular price. That would have sunk you a little bit. And then Bailey Dale there at a similar price there to Nick Blakely at 10,890. He's coming off a 75 last week as well. So let's talk about these guys above 10K first of all. Is there enough value to get to these guys, or are we only really looking at one or possibly none?
I think Blakey and Bailey Dale in particular, we can get by them in easily, and I think they're both pretty underpriced as not maybe the top guy that the team wants to give the ball to, but they're definitely getting that distributing role a lot off halfback. Blakey's price hasn't come up as much as I thought, and I think Bailey Dale's price has come down a bit there despite some good scores. So they're both kind of standout value to me. Lloyd and Caleb Daniel both fine. I think they've both scored really well in this matchup in the past, but they're kind of, I would say, fully priced. So, like if you can get to them, that's great, but I don't think you need to go out of your way to get to those guys.
Tell me about old JPK. No longer available as a midfielder. If he was a midfielder at that price at 12,600, you think, okay, that's not a bad, midfielder's price. But as a defender, and only scoring 45 and 74 through 2 rounds. I'm thinking that he's our first kind of big fade for this particular slate.
Yeah, I think he has to be. Like, if I thought he was a chance to go back in the mids, I'd probably be all over it. But I just can't see it happening.
No, it looks like we
And
lost.
sort of
there he
know,
is.
see how. Oh, you lost me, did you?
Yeah, just lost a little bit there. You're just saying you're not playing JPK. That's what you a long-winded answer there for us.
Yeah, I don't think so. Stay off him this week.
All right. Well, let's scroll down towards the lower end of the selections. There is a fair few this week. If we start here, the Bulldogs, Taylor Duray at 8,050 with no Crozier seems to be a likely target. Ed Richards continues to get ownership, but he's not really paying off his price tag there at 7,410. Maybe he has a 60 plus in him, maybe. And then you've got your key stuff for Cordy, Keith, and Gardner. Any of these guys from the Bulldogs worthy of selection?
No, I think there's too many interesting options just above them there to worry about those guys.
On the flip side, then Sydney. So you got Rampy at 8,980. Braden Campbell is at the 7-2. That could be an interesting one there. Paddy McCartan in his new role there. 66 last week with a 59. Looks pretty good value at 7,010. And then Tom McCartney, the key defender, is there at 6,760. So you're going to talk about Paddy McCartney here, aren't you?
Only to say that I think he's maybe the most popular choice out of those options. I'm pretty keen to pivot to Campbell or Richards. Campbell's he's looked okay. It hasn't translated to fantasy, but I think the team's trying to use his foot skills. So there's plenty of upside with him, I think. And then Ed Richards with Crozier out. Also, Duray, as you said, both have a chance to do something this week. So instead of playing the key defender who has kind of had 2 cracking weeks and just scored 60, I might go for the guys who have a bit more upside.
All right, very good. Let's move straight down to the midfield. Obviously, McRae is always going to be a slate leading player here. He's available at 16,690. He's joined there by Callum Mills at 16,500. They've both been scoring very well. 117 last week for Mills, and McRae obviously just 103 after his initial 120 to start with. Bailey Smith is back in the side at 15,290, but obviously that little red symbol there means he's under an injury cloud. But obviously that huge 154 there is going to garner a lot of attention in terms of if you're just looking at box scores itself. Let's start on these three, just these three, because obviously if you have enough value in your teams, you want to be picking one of these three. Is there any leans out of these three to start with?
Yeah, I'm putting them in the order we see them on the screen. So McRae's he's got the ceiling and he's a consistent scorer. Mills, I think he played a tagging role last week. I don't know if we'll see that again this week, but with his ongoing Achilles issue, I'm always a bit worried about him. And then, obviously Bailey Smith off the injury. He's an absolute roller coaster in fantasy. And if people are going to chase that score with the price rise as well, then it might be a week to see if he's fully fit or not.
Below them, Luke Parker there at 14,980. Did have obviously a huge game over in Adelaide to start with. In Sydney, 119 in the bridge battle. Obviously a little bit quiet there versus Geelong. Treloar is still available at 14,110. Obviously a popular forward selection. And then obviously Isaac Heaney, who had absolutely cracking start of the season as well. So 13,970. And then you got the Bont. We've got to put the Bont in there. We've got to put Dunkley in there as well. Ian Libber, look, they're your next tier. So from Tom Liberatore is at 13,690 onwards. That's our next tier. And I think a lot of people want to try and get 2 of these guys in.
Yes, a lot of cracking names in there. I think this is where I'm trying to get some Dogs players from. So Heaney and Parker both playing forward quite a lot. Kind of part-time midfielders at best. Maybe a chance to fade on some pretty good scores there. Obviously, in Swan stacks, we'll probably want to play a bit of them, but yeah, Dunkley's the one that he'll probably be the most popular of the lot, but I still want to play him. He's just, the way he scores is unreal, kicks goals. He's all over the ground, taking a lot of marks, tackles. He does everything. So, other than a bit of injury risk, it's hard to go wrong with him. And then obviously Bont's got the injury cloud. Libba's a risk of playing forward a lot. So a few question marks there as well.
Yeah, poor old Libba. He actually got a 4 tag only. We had to fix that. So I think Libba is probably one just to be wary of, but he can be a nice little contrarian slate break and play for you as well. Then we get down in the low guys. So obviously the mid-tier guys, Hunter at 10,890, Robon's at 10,700, Ollie Florent at 10,200. Florent didn't really have a super game last week, so that might limit ownership there. And then Chad Warner. So obviously you've got Chad Warner at $1,000 cheaper there. He scored an 87 in his first game last week up in Sydney. And then just below then, there's no real value. Rourke Smith has been all the way up to 9,000 and Dylan Stevens at 8,350. So you have to imagine that bottom three, possibly in bottom four, is going to get a lot of ownership here.
Yeah, I would say bottom 5, because Rowbottom's going great. He didn't play as much midfield last week once Warner came in. Same for Florent. But all 4 of those Swans players, with Parker playing forward, Kennedy playing back, they've all got much better roles than that in previous seasons. Another preseason under their belt, so it's pretty hard to split them. Like any of them could be the guy. Maybe 2 or 3 of them could be the guys on the day. So I think just mix and match all 4 of those Swans guys through. And then, obviously I mentioned I'm a bit worried about Rourke Smith with Bailey Smith coming back in, what that does to how much time he gets up the ground.
Yeah, so he's more likely to score what he scored in round 1 than obviously what he did in round 2.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting, yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to the forwards. Obviously, you got a lot of midfielders to start with. Your key 4 there, Treloar, Heaney, Dunkley, and Liberatore. You got to throw in Tim English as well. So there's your 5 who you probably want to run in this position, and then in the other 2 positions, unless you're just running English as your lone ruckman. So let's talk about the guys underneath then. So Errol at 11,140. Will Hayward's at 10.2. Lance Franklin's at 9.9. He's made the trip down. And then obviously Aaron Norton at 9.6. He's also under an injury cloud as well. So are we avoiding these injury prone under a cloud guys, or you can try and nab these guys that are possibly at a low ownership?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out before if people will want to play Norton or not. He's looked so good when he's out there and does score pretty well on his day. So I'm not really sure if people are going to play him or not, but I am pretty worried about the injury and about the matchup. And as I said before, we've got some interesting key forwards for Sydney who have a much better matchup. So yeah, I think it probably is better just to limit our exposure on Norton a fair bit.
Now, you mentioned earlier in the show that you're pretty worried about this Bulldogs defence, considering what Carlton did last week. So if you think Carlton can do, kick a score on the Bulldogs, you think that the Swanee options can do this. So who are you thinking then? Obviously, if you're looking at key forwards instead of those midfielder types that are on the top of the salaries there.
Yeah, well, obviously we're talking Buddy, we're talking McLean, and probably Amadi coming in. I'm not sure. Is Buddy over the hill in terms of giving us tons in fantasy? I'm not sure, but I think it's definitely possible. Probably the one I'm keenest on is Amadi. He looked super athletic when we saw him last year. Got up the ground a fair bit. And yeah, we saw that's what Mackay and Kerno were doing last week, getting pretty far up the ground, taking those marks on the wing, and then clunking marks inside 50 for goals as well. So I think he's probably the one that I see playing that role the most.
All right. So say if I'm down to my last $7,000 though, and I have to choose one of these lowly forwards down here. Mitch Haddon's there at 7,880. Sam Wicks at 6,900. He's coming off a 64 against the Cats. Cody Waitman has always seems to get ownership because of his price. Price hasn't really moved. 71 last week though, 6,650. And then we've got here, obviously, then these guys here. Vandermeer, he's been a bit rocks and diamonds there at 6,230. Jamari Ugle-Hagan didn't do anything last week. He's only got a 28 after being the sub. Zane Cordy, Anthony Scott. Anthony Scott is probably an interesting one. It's just at the flat 6. So if I'm down to that last $8,700 and I'm supposed to pick one guy left, who are you looking at?
Well, I did a little run with my projections before, and the two guys I was getting was Wicks and Waitman quite a bit.
Yep.
I don't know how I feel about Wicks. He had a good run at the start of last season and has done very little since then. So I'm not sure if he's a guy who can give us like a 90 and win the slate for us, but maybe in a Sydney stack, I'm thinking Wicks. In a dog stack, I'm thinking Waitman.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, it's that time of the show that we asked our co-host here for the team of the week. Let me go all the way back to the Rucks and give us a bit of a side that we can cheer on this week. So who are we starting with?
I'll start nice and safe with the young stallion, Tim English.
Yeah, Tim English. I think that's a good way to start. All right, in your defence, please, and why? And tell me why, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm going to go Bailey Dale. I think it's him and Blakey who are the popular ones, and I'll go the slight pivot to Dale, and then I'll go Braden Campbell for a bit of leverage off Blakey if he happens to get a bit more of the ball this week and racks up that sort of 80 odd that Blakey's been giving us.
All right, who are your mids this week?
So I said at the top, I like McRae. He doesn't tend to get tagged too much, so I think he's pretty safe to run around and rack up the pill. Again, Dunkley, just that role that very rarely goes wrong. He scored 50 points in the last quarter last week, which cost me a fair bit of money. Rowbottom. I think the way he scores is. What, you lose me?
Yes, you're still here. keep turning that wheel.
Yeah, all right. We're on Rowbottom. I think he's just a good scorer. Hopefully he still gets enough time in the midfield to get it done at that price. And Dylan Stevens on the wing, he was really good last week. They weren't scared to go down his side of the field. Looks like he's really come on this year.
All right, and to round out your forwards, you haven't got much cash to splash on that top 5 there, so it looks like you're going with some mid-tier options. What do you got here?
Yeah, too many question marks up the top there, so I'm going to go with the key forward theory. Go down to Buddy. Off high, obviously, from last week, and then I'll go for Amadi. First game of the season, and hope that the masses aren't aware of what he's going to do.
Excellent. All right, so there's Tom's team of the week there. Make sure you take your little screenshots on your phone, and if you listen on the podcast, he's obviously explained that for you. So make sure you get the Draftstars. Plenty of contests there available at any price point. So good luck to you if you are entering this week. Now, obviously, Nicky Boy did ask for some NRL tips. Obviously, Thursday night, there is also a game here, which is the Titans and the Tigers. Let me just quickly bring that up for you. Can you give us probably one play in each position just quickly before we run out of the show? Let's do this. Let's bring this up for you, Tom. Let's start with the old backs. Who are you thinking here for the Tigers? Tigers, Titans. Here we go.
Here we go. All right. Greg Marzu is my play in the backs. Bullocking winger.
So Greg on the wing.
Lots of try. Yeah.
All right. Who's your half hooker?
Oh, can't go past Jock Madden. Too cheap for the amount of talent he has.
And a key forward for us?
David Fafita. That massive 100+ score is coming very soon.
Very good. All right. Make sure you check out Tom's articles for NRL on Daily Fantasy Rankings. Also, catch out his articles for the PGA as well. We've got the big Masters tournament next week. Nicky Boy says thanks very much for joining us. And obviously, you can't wait to listen to the replay. The king of the NRL, he reckons. I think he's nearly on the mark there. You certainly are giving him a shake this year. Look, Tom, thank you very much for joining me today for the Draftstars AFL show. You've done really well today, obviously coming off a short spell. Rudy, hopefully we'll be back next week. If not, we'll get you back on again, Tom, to talk some more AFL.
No worries. Thank you for having me, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Make sure you a like on the episode, please, wherever you're doing it. Last comment. Here you go. Adam here says, great work, guys. No, what HH stands for. There you go. We've learned something today. That's awesome. Half hooker. Very good. All right. Thanks very much. We'll catch you next week for round 4, and we'll look forward to having your company then. Catch you later.